Hello there, welcome back to Stellaris Nemesis, where last time we went to war with plenty of people to our south and vassalized most of them in wars that were all very much one-sided and pretty easy. We've now got the economy and the military we need to do whatever we want and to sort of win the game, but there's some other stuff we want to do along the way. One thing was to grab the evolutionary mastery ascension perk here. We're going to need that in order to absorb our big neighbouring faction, the Hive, without them dying, which is what usually happens to me. We can grab this perk. This unlocks a tech you can get, which then allows you to assimilate hives instead of purging them, and get some pops. And as mentioned in the previous part, if we have the pops of the second biggest faction, we're going to be pretty much golden for the rest of the game. While we wait for that to get sorted out, let's start another war. We're going to go to war with the guys I already killed in the previous part when they were allied to someone else. Now they're on their own, we can vassalize them, or we can press the claim to vassalize them. All we have to do is go in and finish them off again. Not going to be much there, not going to be anything to the war, just a matter of microing it, very annoying and such. But then came the big moment of this campaign. I had just reloaded a save after going away, and what I tend to do when I come back to the campaign is to pause for a while and look through the menus, sort out economic stuff, just fiddle with things in the background that I don't talk about in this commentary. And while I was doing it this time, I discovered this. There's a whole menu about the crisis hidden away on the third tab of the traditions screen. So there actually was some content in this DLC content. You can see some things going on here. We might even have some mechanics to play with. We're currently a level 1 crisis according to this, and we're gaining menace points in order to level up our crisis level. You get various perks at each level, and the kind of plot, the reaction of the game to you becoming a crisis, which so far is non-existent, is apparently tied to this crisis level system. And that's where a catch comes into things. You can't actually progress through the crisis system if you haven't done the crisis special projects at each level. I've got millions of special projects, I'm just ignoring them all, including this one apparently. I didn't even realize it was here. We have to do this very short special project that I'm probably supposed to have already done at this stage, where it's kicking off a bit of a crisis plotline about us tapping into other dimensions for energy and such. We can do that now while we micro the war and get loads of perks for doing it. Perks we don't really need, but it's the content of the DLC, and that's what I'm here to see. So it's finally time for a speed run of the Nemesis part of the Stellaris Nemesis campaign. Here we are, having completed the first project. We're basically discovering this thing called the Shroud, another dimension full of energy, the sort of thing that tends to exist in Stellaris, and we're going to start utilizing it for our own nefarious means. And every time you rank up, it mentions here how powerful we're becoming. We're already pretty powerful, we're the biggest faction by all metrics, and we have this big network of vassals we can leverage as well. Now we're just going to flaunt it a bit, I guess. What I thought probably should happen but doesn't is that you get sort of punished at each stage. So for example, becoming the crisis doesn't do anything. I thought maybe becoming crisis level 2 would like kick us out of the parliament or something. The other factions don't care very much, as it turns out, until the very late stage of this mechanic. So we'll just keep going. We're already crisis level 3, we just haven't done the gateway project to make the perks enable. There's a little look at the various things you can do to get menace points. Just having vassals gives you menace points, so we're actually going to gain them even if we don't do anything at this stage. Handy. Here's us completing the next special project. Just tapping in some more to alternate energy dimensions. Still no particular use for them, but that's going to be coming later. One thing these level ups do actually provide you is a new set of ships. You get an alternate build pattern for ships, so as well as the cruiser, you have the menacing cruiser and the menacing destroyer, the menacing corvette. These are versions of each ship that have better attack but lower defense, but most interestingly you can build them using minerals instead of alloys. Normally you need an extra stage of industry to get alloys from minerals. This lets you build ships just from minerals, so you could spec out your economy to not worry about alloys quite so much. we don't really have that concern. We have an unlimited supply of everything, so it's just nice to have another option, and I think I did throw a few of them into my fleets just for fun. Here's the next special project going through. We're now tunneling even more into another dimension. Still nothing big happening, but we're starting to see what I presume is a reaction to me leveling up through the crisis system. One of the ancient empires is getting annoyed with us. We're essentially starting to see what I thought would happen way back when I first said become the crisis. The other factions are noticing that we're being extremely belligerent. All they want to do here is humiliate us. I was like, well fine, you can humiliate me, because the other option, to resist them, could lead to war, and we don't want to be at war with an ancient empire, since they would probably win until much later in the game when you can get the same technology as them. One thing I wanted to note, by the way, about this whole crisis system, is that this screen, this UI, is pretty good. This is just a reaction to me ranting about the UI in Rome Total War Remastered. Here's a UI with everything you need on the screen. It's all pretty big. It really gets you straight to the message of what's going on, where you're supposed to be going with this, and how to do it all at once. Good stuff. Obviously, the only problem is it's the third tab of a different menu for no reason. Tab controls on the bottom of a menu rather than the top. Well, that's not a standard design practice, but much more importantly, this menu should just be a standalone menu, similar to something like the Galactic Parliament menu, or the Federation menu, or the Event Horizon menu that appears in the Gigastructural Engineering mod, where it's just a button on the screen, maybe with some visual aids to show you the progress you're currently making towards the next menace level, without having to click on it. In fact, I would even go so far as to say they should probably have kicked you out of the Galactic Parliament by now, so the button to look at your crisis stuff could just go there instead. Maybe becoming the crisis automatically disconnects you from diplomatic links. I don't know, something to differentiate it a bit more, because so far everything's the same, even up to this high level crisis, apart from the fact that the ancient empires don't like me. In this case, I actually have to give up on being allowed to enslave people or purge them in order to make this ancient empire be okay with our shenanigans. That's actually fine by me, because as already noted, we're not enslaving or purging. I'm keeping everybody alive for economic purposes. Later on, once we become so powerful that we don't have to do anything anyone says, we'll kill them all. So overall, this does play into my plan. The ancient wisdom of those empires was unable to discern it by the looks of things. After a while, we win that war because we capture everything, so it ends on the old technicality. That skips the ending part. And we've got another vassal for our pile, gaining us more menace points as we menacingly do whatever it is we do to our vassals. I think we get some of their resources or something. And then a bit later, our integration of the hive goes through, and now it's time for the moment of truth. Will they all die from being disconnected from the hive? Well, they don't. We've actually done it this time, which is great because this adds like 50% to our population, taking in all of the hive pops, since the hives tend to have absolutely loads of them. They're all now in this assimilation job. This does mean it's going to tank our economy because we've expanded our population by 50%, but all of those new pops won't produce anything. They're going to sit in assimilation mode for a while, and they'll eventually just become normal pops and start taking up their old jobs. For now, we just have to support them. Well, that's fine. We have plenty of stuff to sell if we need to support the economy. I'm just happy this finally worked. Normally they all just die and you're forced to purge them, which we can't do because that would be breaking our deal with the ancient empires, wouldn't it? So now we have to go through and sort out all of the new colonies we've got and fix the planets. They all have crazy builds and stuff. Need to change the names on half of them as well. All very stressful. The crime rate on all of the new colonies was super high. I couldn't work out why for ages, but I eventually realized it's because all of these new hive pops are in the residential category rather than the citizen category. This stops them from doing certain jobs, as it turns out, and some of those jobs are soldiers and enforcers, the things that reduce crime on your planets. Meaning all of the new planets shot up to very high crime rates, most of them 100% I seem to recall. And there's not too much I can do about that. Here's me trying to do something about it, but this won't work. we're adding more enforcer jobs and things, but nobody's doing them. We need to colonize the planet a bit with our beetles to look after the hive. And no, I can't make the hive citizens because we're xenophobic. We're not allowed to enhance the rights of any of the other species. Well, I don't really know what the downsides to having 100% crime are. The planet still seems to roughly function as they did before. I'm guessing their stability is debuffed and that reduces their output. But their output was about 0 thanks to assimilation. Anyway, I didn't mind in the end. Next up, well, let's invade the next person around the circle of the galaxy. I noted there that my recently acquired vassals, the Ravagers, really hate me. I don't know if your vassals can rebel, but need to keep that in mind. Anyway, we'll pop off another vassalization war on the Tuxcan here. We're already set up on the border, ready to do it, so in we go. These guys have been left alone for a while. They actually have some ships and stuff, but what they don't have is enough number. They do have a couple of fleets of about this strength. So altogether they might have been able to put up a decent fight, but I don't need to put my fleets together to fight them as it stands, so we can attack them in multiple locations, have double the number, win, and we don't have to worry about casualties, since we can just easily remake anything we lose, and we'll quickly rush through, take all of their shipyards so they can't cause too much more kerfuffle. Then it will be the usual very long process of finishing them off. In the meantime, started building a science nexus. This will allow us to accelerate our research and just become generally more dominant. We're probably already way ahead in research just because we have more planets to get research from. Well, now it's going to be even better. Here we are at the end of the war. We did all the stuff. We vassalized the Tuxcan, and that's another one. We now have about 2/3 of the galaxy either under our direct control or as our vassals. So we're really getting there. The remaining powers need to cotton on to what's happening here. We've almost maxed out our menace, which is what we're trying to do at the moment. We'll grab some more menace from our vassals, just having vassals, which will eventually allow us to reach the max and become a stage 5 crisis, which will start progressing the crisis plot, essentially. We're also pretty much done making our hive pops into regular pops. That's all nice, although it doesn't really sort out the situation in the hive space, because their faction probably had various buffs and stuff for being a hive, and we've ended up with way more people than there are houses or jobs. Here's me being confused at why nobody's doing the enforcer job, giving us 100% crime on this planet. Well, maybe I'll work it out eventually. But I started thinking of ways to try and solve the problems of hive space, because all of the planets are really unstable, crime-ridden, overcrowded, and full of unemployment. We'll come back to that in a second. I noticed the Tuxcan have built the Century Array megastructure, so that will allow us to see everybody else's ships and confirm that we could invade them if we want to, although as you might note, I'm not. I just decided to hang around, upgrade our ships and do nothing for a bit to progress to the next crisis level. Somebody dared to actually rebel over here. Inconvenient. I thought, well, let's just have a zero tolerance policy for rebels, shall we? We'll use this extermination war goal we got given ages ago and haven't done anything with. We'll just kill the rebels off. This will damage the economy, but at this stage, doesn't really matter. I'm sure the Beetles just want to let loose and go for it. They don't have any ships, so there's not much to this war. We can also now use our Armageddon orbital bombardment stance, which you get with one of the crisis levels. This just allows us to kill them very quickly from orbit. Well, I say very quickly. It still takes a long time. I think it just prioritizes attacking the civilians more or something. In this case, I seem to remember I didn't actually bombard them to death, because I had ordered some transport fleets to come here and take the planet, and they took it while it was under bombardment, so we ended up not actually fulfilling our extermination war goal. Found it amusing that they are not interested in peace, even in this situation, being nuked several times per second. They still think they can get out of this one. Well, fine. We'll see how that goes for them. Here is my plan to sort out all of the difficult civic issues going on in the hive space. We're going to make an enormous cosmic trash can, which we can do using the habitats technology. Then we'll fill it with residential areas and fill it with all of the unemployed people from the planet. So I'm not sure if this is the first time this idea has come up with. What we're going to do is concentrate the undesirables in a sort of camp. And the problem with this is that it's not as easy as I thought. In my previous campaign as the museum species, I was doing this to people all the time. But because we don't have the same civics with this setup, it costs me influence to move people into the trash. That means we can't just put everybody we want in here, we need to be a little bit sparing, so I just picked the planets with the absolute worst unemployment and the biggest populations, moved all of the unemployed people out into the trash, then the stability on those planets will be much higher, and the output of everybody left will go up. And then as for the trash, well, who cares what happens here, they're going to be a bit angry with us, but if they rebel, we can just kill them, otherwise they might actually do a little bit of work while they were there, so that's all fine. Next, it's time for a mini-war against one of the other rebellions going on across our domain, because our vassals experienced loads of rebellions, 3 or 4 new factions were formed down at the bottom of the galaxy. This is the only one I bothered to attack because I wasn't that interested. They're only taking single systems, I just thought fine, they can be independent. I'm too lazy to be the crisis at this stage, it's too inconvenient. However, at last, something does actually happen in the midst of this war. Everybody else has finally accepted my claims. They will admit that I am the crisis, and they're going to do something about it. Well, it's about time, it's way too late in fact. But yes, they have banded together and have declared us a crisis. This means we're always at war with every other faction from now on. So things will spice up all of a sudden, although only really because we're not ready for this. Our military strength is still very large in comparison to theirs, but we aren't in position to attack them. Well, except in one case where I was actually already stacking up to go up this edge of the galaxy here on the left, so I happen to have a fleet ready to go in and cause some trouble. It should be enough on its own to blow up a bunch of ships and take shipyards, so over here won't be so bad. But essentially, we're moving into the final phase of this campaign, and there's actually going to be more to it and more crisis-y stuff we can do, but I'll save that to discuss in the next and probably final part.